Hello, my name is Azeem. I'm also known as Azeem Digital. Very proud to bring you the first episode of my podcast called Azeem Digital Asks. Incredibly honoured to be joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. eCommerce, as I call him, Luke Carthy, and we have a great conversation about things that he's been doing really well, things that he hasn't done really well, what got him into the industry, what his inspirations are, where his head is at right now, and how he thinks various changes in the industry are going to affect him and his business. Have a listen. I hope you have as much fun, maybe even more, listening to this as we did when we recorded it. Thank you. Luke, hello. Welcome to the show.
Cheers, Azeem, man. It's awesome to be here, man. So, yeah, thank you.
Very glad to have you on the show, my friend. Let's get right into it because this episode is about you and not about me. So, for anybody listening to this who has been like living under a digital rock, do you want to just start off and give a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, no pressure. All right. So, live and breathe e-commerce. Uh, yeah, this is going really well. I'm so shit at talking about myself. Right. So, live and breathe e-commerce. Started eBay, 16 years old, loved it. Built a business, selling stuff on eBay, and it all kind of stemmed from my obsession at working at couriers. And yeah, I now kind of straddle both CRO, SEO, analytics, and just talk sense to clients. So yeah, done agency side, done in-house, which I really, really enjoyed, and then kind of gone solo in the consulting. So yeah, man, that's me.
Awesome. Good stuff. So, we'll dig in to your professional past shortly. But we'll start off with a bit of a separate question. And I'm going to caveat the question by banning you from using the word Greg's in your answer. Okay.
It's gonna be tough,
So
man.
you're in your favorite restaurant. Where are
Okay.
you and what are you ordering?
All right. So I love teppanyaki. The
Nice.
atmosphere, the chance that you might lose your hair, like the ambiance. So if anyone's never been to teppanyaki before, just to explain the vibe and why it's such an awesome deal. So everyone basically sits around this table, but the table is not a normal table. It's practically on fire, and you've got a chef in the middle who cooks like incredible Japanese food. But yeah, teppanyaki, seafood. I'm in heaven. And that's what I miss the most because it's probably the most socially distancing, like challenging thing to replicate, right? You can't, yeah. So teppanyaki is the one, man.
Oh, yeah. Hungry now, definitely.
I can hear the sizzle, man.
So yeah, listen, let's dig into your professional past a little bit. So you mentioned eBay and everything else that you've worked on that's brought you up to today. When did you realize that marketing was going to be the career for you?
Yeah, so it was definitely in the first couple of sales from eBay, to be fair. So just in terms of where I got into eBay. So as I said, I kind of worked at Currys for well, 5 years in total, but I was at Curry's probably about 9 months at this point. And I worked at Curry's when we went from the old school cathode ray tube, 50 kilogram bad boy TVs to flat screen and Sky HD. So I was in that transition. We were starting to sell both. And if anyone remembers back to those kind of days, you know that a HDMI cable was money, like you're talking 50 quid for a meter. Ridiculous. So I was like, this isn't okay. Like, this is way too expensive. So Alibaba, typed in HDMI cable, found some good products for cheap, and just bought a load with my EMA money, right, as well as my money I was making from couriers, and just started from there, man. I just found a gap. It wasn't fiercely competitive because it was still new and shiny technology. And yeah, when you got that eBay notification to say you sold something, I think that was for me when I realized, okay, I like this. This is cool. This is what I want to do.
So in case there are any American listeners, do you want to quickly explain two things? Number one, curries, and number two, EMA.
Yes, of course. I'm forgetting. This is international, huh? We do big things. All right. Um, so Curry's is basically Best Buy, but not Best Buy. So it's like the electrical superstore, if you like. And EMA, if anyone in the UK is probably like grinning now if you're old enough to know what EMA is, but EMA was basically 30 quid a week, I think. It might be 30 quid a month. I don't know, but either way, it was 30 quid that you got in your pocket like every so often. And most people spend it down the pub, and especially Weatherspoons, right? 6.95 beer and a burger deal. Anyway, moving on. Uh, I saved up my money and just spent some money on Alibaba. So that it was basically money that you got paid for being a student at college, or to the Americans. What do the Americans call college that we call in the UK? Is it still college? It's weird.
Pass. High
Don't
school?
know.
I don't know.
Yeah. So whatever. But that's as clear as I can make it for the American guys. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, good stuff. But digressing slightly, EMA, I joined late and I got a back payment of like 200 odd pounds, and it just was the
Nice.
best thing ever. I bought the nicest pair of Nike trainers. I used to carry a bag around with me and make sure that if anything got on them, I would just have a packet of wet wipes to hand to just clean them off. But yeah.
Mate, that is brilliant. That is absolutely monumental.
So we've digressed there. So you've told us, how you got into marketing. Thinking back to then, now, so if you could go back to when you very first started out in the industry, what advice would you give to yourself if you knew then what you know now?
Wow, that's a really good question, you know. What would I say? I'd say buy more stock, like have bigger balls and just buy more stuff. Because the one thing I certainly had an issue with is not having the confidence to invest enough money into buying stock. So you've got to remember when it's like you're buying stock overseas. If you're an e-commerce brand that buys products and they take time to make, or there's a whole shipping delay, there's that horrible compromise you have to make. Do you buy enough stock so that you've got enough to fulfill demand, or do you kind of try and keep some cash in the back, or potentially have loads of stock that you can't shift? But for me, I always never bought enough, and I knew it was a problem. But I think when you're young and you're like 16, 17, 18, um, like £200 is a lot of money. It's not, I guess, when you're an adult potentially, because mortgages and bills and stuff like that. But 200 quid to someone who's only earning like £300 a month through curries is a lot of cash. So I didn't want to buy something and then find out I'm like technically can't go out or whatever. So that would be what I'd do, is say, look, when you know you're onto a good thing, invest in it wholeheartedly. I think additional to that as well is that for most part, and this is a bit of a sweeping statement, but for the most part, stock is liquid. So, if you're in the world of e-commerce or you buy goods and sell goods, if the venture doesn't work, there's always going to be an audience for that particular product. It's never going to be 100% loss unless it's like bespoke, or custom made. So, for example, if you're a retailer selling clothes or something like that, like, investing money in stock is probably a much lesser risk than, say, investing a lot of money in a service or an agency or something like that, because you can sell it on, as a job lot on eBay or something like that. But yeah, advice to my younger self would be buy more stuff.
Awesome. Really interesting to hear that. So it seems like you've learned a lot throughout your working career and continuing to learn, of course. What other learnings can you share with the listeners that you have picked up throughout your career?
All right. So I like this question because I think digital, whether it's SEO or paid ads or whatever it is, any kind of digital industry or a digital skill set, if you're not in, if you're not, if you're new to this or you're studying it or whatever, it can come across as like really intimidating, right? Like fast paced, quick fire, always changing. And to a point, that is true. But the fundamentals of marketing will always be the fundamentals of marketing. And that is, what does the customer want? What does the customer need? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And how do you differentiate yourself? Like questions like that do not change regardless of the new platform that comes out. So whether it's TikTok or the new TikTok or the new Facebook or new Twitter or whatever that comes out, yes, social networks adapt and change and there's new things all the time, but the fundamentals are still the same. You build the content that your audience wants, you build the website that your customers want, and you provide the service and the products that your customers need. So I think for me, sometimes you need to kind of forget the new and shiny and just focus on the fundamentals, because the fundamentals never change, but new and shiny always does. So you could be a master, an absolute, legend in the new and shiny, but if you haven't got your fundamentals right, then everything you do is flawed. Equally, you can create some really gorgeous looking or really good looking stuff in terms of like it actually answers the question, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't look too great, and it can still work. And I think a case in point here is Google. Um, Everyone kind of forgets Google of the 90s, right? It was ugly ass search engine.
Yeah.
But they still smashed it, man. Google was still Google. They still gave people what they needed, and now it's this minimalist, clean, UX focused brand who makes products and services and all this kind of stuff. But the core principles of what Google is still very much the same. It gives people who are searching on the search engine what they want, better or theoretically better than anybody else does. So, you know, I think that's a really important one.
Definitely, really, really interesting to hear that. And I think a lot of people kind of skip over the basics, don't they, to just chase after the new and shiny, as you put it. So it'd be
Yeah,
good for people to actually hear that. Let's move on then a little bit and let's talk about what inspires you, or more importantly, who inspires you. So in this industry, bearing in mind, you could probably answer this with so many different people, but I'm going to keep you brief. Who's been a
sure.
big inspiration for you in the industry?
All right. So, I think it's the people that give back. I know, cliche, mushy, all that kind of stuff. But genuinely, I feel that the SEO community is probably one of the most forthcoming and warm. I mean, don't get me wrong, as its moments where everyone blows up, this new algorithm comes out and everyone loses their shit. But for the most part, the SEO clan is a really helpful bunch. And I think people that help give back, and just big up the little guys, the little guys and girls in the field are incredible. So a couple names spring to mind immediately. There's Brittany Mueller. She's great. She's such an absolute wizard in what she does in data science and SEO, but she's humble. She's approachable. She's a superstar, but she's not like Kanye West with it. She's not like, you can't get near this, So anyone can kind of ask her questions, which is really nice. I think Barry Adams, again, a huge help in my projection transition, sorry, from in-house to going solo, which is a huge change. It's a huge leap of faith, but just been able to be really candid and raw with Barry and say, look, dude, let's talk about money. Let's talk about skills. Let's talk about pitfalls and things you've learned. And he's just given me all of this information, right? So people like these guys who just give back. Um, yeah, I'm going to kick myself as soon as this recording is finished because there's so many people I know I can't mention. Um, Andrew Optimizy is great. I think his whole Optimizy thing is brilliant, and the kind of little Oxford clan. I had a real blast meeting some fresh people. But yeah, and then I think last but not least, outside of SEO, um, who else can I think? I just think people who just kind of see the best in people. So Kirsty Horse is great. She's kind of like this, almost like I know this sounds mad sexist, and I promise it's not, but she almost comes like the Mother Teresa of SEO. In the sense that she's always got everybody's back. She's always looking out for people. She always wants to bring the best out in people. And yeah, man, I know. I could literally do this section for an hour, bro, and I'll probably still miss somebody out. So I'm just gonna say, if I haven't mentioned you and I've bigged you up in the past, whether it's in your DMs or publicly, then yeah, you too, man. Or
Awesome. Great stuff. So you talked there about moving or transitioning into flying solo. Let's talk a little bit about that. So, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing right now, other than coronavirus, and how are you going to overcome it?
okay. So my biggest challenge, like personal challenge or business challenge, or both.
Both, and then you can talk about COVID afterwards.
All right. So business challenge, I think. I've always been an extrovert, right? So I'm always kind of like the out there guy who's happy to go and shake hands and scream at people and interrupt conversations at like networking gigs. I am that guy. Like it or not, that's who I am. And the
Yeah.
lack of conferences has made that particularly difficult. And I kind of cope with that initially by just saying yes to everything that ended up in my DMs or emails, whether that was webinars or kind of doing talks or whatever. And it just got to a point where I was mad overwhelmed, just trying to almost satisfy a craving to be with people, with networking and doing the thing that SEOs do so well, which is networking. Let's be honest, get drunk. So, that was gone. And that hit me not just financially, right? Because, it is what it is. That's like kind of a given. But emotionally, that was really quite difficult. Um, so that's kind of straddles both personal and business. I think more towards the personal side of things. I think the biggest struggle has been I had a bit of imposter syndrome as a dad, weird enough. So professionally, I don't have too much imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But as a dad, I was in lockdown kind of in the middle of it, maybe like mid-March, end of March, and I was thinking, wow, I'm a shit dad. Like I just constantly beat myself up for the fact that I wasn't my perfect image in my head as a dad. And don't get me wrong, like I was attentive. I didn't leg it anywhere or anything like that. But I always just felt
Yeah.
that because I needed time away from my kids because it was so intense, in a hot box of just like kids and me trying to work and everything else. I felt every time that I had to get time away, I felt like a bad dad. And it took me some time to really kind of understand that, hey, dude, stop giving yourself such a hard time. One, lockdown. Two, you are a great dad because X, Y, and Z. And, spoke to people in the family and they were like, dude, stop being an idiot, man. You're a brilliant dad. There's so many dads who couldn't do what you do. Um, and then, so that was kind of like the personal thing for me that really kind of stuck its boot in my ass. So, um, yeah, but now, kind of lockdowns kind of, I'm not going to say over, but semi winding down and we're getting back to normality, whatever the hell that means now. Um,
Yeah.
and I haven't had those thoughts for a while, so things are getting better. Um, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Good. Good. That's really good to hear. And for what it's worth, I don't think you're a bad dad at all. Just some of the stuff that you share on Twitter and everything else
Appreciate that,
just
Azeem.
makes you
Thank
think
you.
like, what a guy. I often see this and I think, God, when does he sleep? Because in so you've got a title that I've given you and is now on a podcast, so it's going to be shared widely as Mister eCommerce. That's what I call you.
All right, all
Um,
right. I like it.
but yeah,
Trademark.
brilliant. Yeah, I want 50% of everything. By the way, just a live episode of Dragon's Den is happening right now. Look.
Oh, damn.
But yeah, look, we can't do an episode in semi-lockdown without talking about COVID and coronavirus.
Yeah, man.
How did that affect your business?
Um, do you know what? Actually, you just kind of said that, and it's kind of brought to the forefront of my head two things. So, one again is more personal, kind of emphasizing on the last question. So I'll jump into answering this first, and then I'll jump back. But
Okay.
COVID and business. So I jumped into consulting independently back in October of last year. So relatively fresh to the whole thing. I like to think when you've done a year, you can start to see where your peaks and troughs are and start to plan, stuff and calendars and all that kind of stuff. So I was kind of 6 months in and then boom, COVID. And I had a really good kind of run up to that point. So March came, February, it was kind of brewing, it was in the news, but no one really took it seriously, still going to the pub. And then March, lockdown, official kind of you're prisoned in your house, don't leave kind of vibes. And I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. But March was dead. March was, I think I had one client who two clients, one in the world of fashion, believe it or not, who believed in my efforts and the digital space so much that they insisted on continuing their spend on SEO and thought they could use it as a almost like a quiet space to get a lot of shit done, which was awesome. And then another client in the world of FX and currency exchange, which stocks and shares was just volatile as heck. So they were making some money from that. So I had two clients kind of paying the bills, if you like. But it was a double-edged sword because although I had no work, I felt more financially secure than I ever had done. Because the way that I saw it is if I'd have been made redundant from a job, I may have had about 6 weeks of money to keep me and the kids and the house and safe without having to have the bailiffs at the door. While jumping into consulting, I had at that time about 3 or 4 months. So I already felt good, but equally on the other hand, I didn't know when COVID was going to end. So I was kind of like, this 3 or 4 months is great, it's progress, but is 3 or 4 months going to be enough? So I just had to keep myself busy to avoid thinking about it. So I started a webinar series. I was like jumping on all these webinars, like I said, feeding my extrovert and everything else. And I got burnt out for all the wrong reasons. I was doing loads of free work and publicity and all this kind of stuff, but I was bringing in no extra money. So I
Yeah.
started to panic. And then April came and there was kind of like a light shower of hope. A couple of leads and inquiries came through. And then May, boom, explosion, clients everywhere. Which was funny because I didn't know which kind of camp I sat in. In the world of e-commerce, as we know, has absolutely gone off the charts. People are buying more stuff online. We won't jump into that. It's pretty obvious that everyone's going online at the minute.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw myself as someone who'd be able to ride that wave and benefit from it. And at the beginning of COVID, I didn't. And then, yeah, April, May, June, July, it's just been a trajectory of up, 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 up. Increased my prices to deal with demand because my kids were at home with me, so I had less time, and I assumed the one rule of commerce, right? The one rule of business: if demand is up and supply is down, you increase your price. So I had less time, and more people wanted it, so I increased my price. And yeah, I learned a lot. It was hard, it was difficult, it was challenging, but I'm in a good space now, and yeah, I'm better for it. The business is better for it, and I think it's taught me a lot about being yeah, building a business that can be sustainable through crap like that is pretty good going. So long may it live.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So I was going to ask you this question later on, but you've segued into this very nicely. You might have seen, and if you haven't, then I'm definitely putting you on the spot on the podcast now. But you might have seen that early today, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, he's looking at plans to introduce an online sales tax to try and protect high street shops just because of the competition that's coming from internet retailers.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Um, I'm going to be frank with you, dude. I think that's bullshit. I think it's very much like it's stunting growth. It's making change difficult, and it's basically putting up a row of sticks against a tsunami of a wave, right? It's not going to do anything. It's just going to piss everybody off because
Yeah.
every major retailer and even independent retailers have an e-commerce presence. So, if you think about the independent businesses, whether they're butchers, whether they're selling homewares or clothing, these guys have a high street presence. Great, brilliant. Now, these stores may have also had an e-commerce presence way before COVID. So you're going to tax those people on top of the rates and everything else they have to pay to keep their shop open. Great. And then you've had a massive tidal wave of incremental um, e-commerce stores via Shopify, WooCommerce, and kind of get online quick platforms as a result of losing footfall on the high street due to COVID, and then they're going to be taxed as well. And then all that's going to do is put prices up online. So you're going to pass the expense on to the customer anyway. So it just seems like you're kind of trying to stunt growth. I think I kind of understand what he's doing, and I think he's trying to find ways to recover, monies and tax and everything else as the result for loss of COVID. But um, taxing change is dangerous. I don't really know what the solution is, and it's easy for me to just kind of moan, like a lot of people do about government and what they do. But I genuinely think that that's not progress. It's not progress at all, to be honest. So I'm not looking forward to seeing that shit roll out.
Yeah, good. I imagine some of your clients might ask you that question very soon. So this is a nice little, very public way to prepare for that.
Sure.
Yeah. Sadly, we're nearly at the end, which is a shame because I could literally talk to you for hours, mate. But I understand, like you said, a lot of people are demanding your time. So, what are you working on right now that you can share with the listeners?
All right. So I'm working on all sorts, man. What am I working on? You know what? I wish this could be the podcast that I announce something really cool and sexy, but I'm working on something in the space of hair care right now, which I'm hoping is going to be a success. Um, that is all I'm prepared to say. I'm going to say hashtag BLM and hair care, and then just leave people's minds to kind of go wild, and more will be revealed in the coming weeks. Um, so yeah, my own kind of little e-commerce venture, because I do miss the buzz of kind of having my own e-commerce business, and I think it's good for business in terms of what I do to kind of practice what I preach. So it's quite, it's a different set of skills to tell people what to do, and then it's a separate set of skills altogether to take your own learnings and build a business from that. So if I can do both, then brilliant. Prices go up again, right? So there's that, and then just doing, just grinding for clients, really, just doing stuff and audits and yeah, doing the day job. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of personal development that I'm working on just to become a better person. I think if you're not working on improving something, not to make anyone feel pressured, I don't want anyone to feel that they have to kind of constantly self-develop, but I think it's healthy progress to find something you're not particularly good at, and either getting rid of it or making it better. It's something I do every year if I can. Is that when every birthday comes around, I think, what's one thing I hate or one thing I'm not very good at, and do I want to improve it enough? And if the answer is yes, then it's something I'll go after. So to give you one example, I love the idea of like books, but I'm not a reader. I don't like books. I can't sit still
Yeah.
very well. So I've downloaded an app called Bookist, I think it is. So considering I don't even know what the app's called, clearly means I'm doing well. Um, Blinkist, there we go. And it basically just kind of chops up books down into 20-minute reads, rather than kind of sitting down with a big book that's going to take me like 3 or 4 weeks to read. So progress, or so I'm led to believe anyway.
Awesome. Awesome. Right. Just before I let you go, last couple of questions then.
Yeah,
This one
seven.
hopefully is not going to throw you off too much, but if me and you swapped roles right now, what would you ask yourself that I haven't asked you?
Okay. Uh, yeah. Okay. This is a question. All right. So to be honest, the questions you've asked have been quite good. Then I'll tell you why, just to try and divert away from answering your question. I don't know. I'm going to say let's talk about BLM for a minute.
Okay.
Is a question, and I think because there's a thing there's if someone may or may not have seen it, was like a flash tweet, but me and Kirsty Hulse were working on a project. Kirsty is, as I said, she's brilliant, and she's weird. She's almost like Google, where she monitors all your conversations and just manages to text you at the right moment. But I was going through a bit of a identity crisis due to BLM, when the whole George Floyd thing really blew up and hit the media, and I was just kind of sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. And then my whole childhood and everything else leading up to now has kind of been brought to the surface and everything else. And it's just, I guess, I don't want to turn this into like a whole BLM episode, but I just want to kind of say that um, lots of people have reached out and said awesome things. And just kind of been positive and said, look, I hope you're doing cool, and I'm really sorry about what's happened and all this kind of stuff, which is great. But I also want to say that conversation is really important, and it's really important that you talk to people, whether it's BLM related, whether it's kind of imposter syndrome, whether it's work, whether it's money. um, like, just find someone that you can talk to. It doesn't even have to be someone in the real world. It could be someone online. Twitter DMs is great for that. WhatsApp is great for that. And just ping them. Just get it out in the open. Lockdown is a bitch. It's getting people in their own heads far too much, and it's challenging mental health like you wouldn't believe. So, if I could, just kind of invite people to just pick up the phone. You don't have to actually get on the phone, because I know when everyone thinks pick up the phone, it means dialing a number and talking to someone, which people don't do anymore. But I mean, just
Yeah.
sending a Slack DM or sending a WhatsApp and just saying, look, can we just DM message for a while or whatever. I did it. It really helped me, and I think if I didn't, then I'd have been in a different place right now. So yeah, just to throw that one out there.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Perfect answer. Goes to show this is raw, unedited, and you can't fake that emotion, and everything that you've just said
Yeah,
resonates with me 100%. Brilliant stuff. That love that. Can't advocate for that enough. So yeah, have a conversation. If you're listening to this now, whenever it goes out, hopefully soon, then reach out to that person you've been meaning out to reach out to. That's all I'll say on that. Last thing from me then, Luke, is I want to put you into a hypothetical situation. You
cool.
are deep in a data analysis
Hmm.
Excel spreadsheet zone. You need to get 100% productive. What are you listening to? What's your go-to song, artist, playlist?
All right, this is good. It's a really good question. I have a couple of moods that I like to go to. I find that R&B really gets me in the zone. You can call that as cliche as you want. Black guy likes R&B. What's new? Yep, I know. But R&B really helps me to get there. But things that have things that are a little bit too intense in terms of like fast lyrics and deep thought processes and stuff like that just distract me big time. But R&B, soft beats, trap music, or trap beats at least. And even sometimes just instrumental. If anyone's into reggae who's listening, just looking for some decent reggae instrumentals is brilliant. Um, but I just kind of let Spotify do its thing. I've been a Spotify user for years, and I guess the more you use it, the more it knows you. So I just
Yeah.
kind of throw on the Discover Weekly playlist and normally find some gems in there. Or you get your daily mixes, which are pretty cool. So just throwing them on across the week can be really cool. But one thing I absolutely cannot listen to is radio. I don't know why, but every time a song stops and the presenter's kind of doing the thing and talking and making conversation, I immediately start work, almost like I'm in that conversation. So for me, radio doesn't work, but Spotify is the one, and a decent pair of earphones.
Yeah. Love Spotify 100% and completely agree with you. The more you use it, the better it gets.
Yeah. The one thing I will say though, mate, if anyone on Spotify is listening, can you invest some time and effort in incognito mode, please? Because like sometimes my kids just play Baby Shark and it keeps coming up on my Discover Weekly, and I don't want that to happen anymore. So incognito mode, please, Spotify. Thank you very much.
So I'm obviously going to edit that bit out to make it seem like you've got a big interest in Baby Shark yourself.
Geezer. To be honest, you know what, mate? Start it. If a lady can pull it off, then maybe I can as well, right?
Listen, this has been absolutely brilliant. Where can people find out more about you or get in touch with you?
All right. So the good news is my name is fairly unique. So there's not too many other Luke Carthys I know. Actually, there is this one white guy who is, I think, in his 20s now, who lives in the UK. Weirdly enough, we need to go meet him. But yeah, Google Luke Carthy. You'll find me at Mr. Luke Carthy on Twitter, LinkedIn, lukecarthy.com. Basically, if you want to find me, you will find me. And when the world is back to normal, you'll probably catch me at every single conference going, because I'm going to be absolutely chowing down on Conference Fest. So I just can't wait. So yeah, come find me. Slide in my DMs, they're open. Any questions, reach out.
Awesome. Luke, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for giving up some of your time to join me today.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me on. It's been awesome.
Take it easy. So that was a whole lot of fun. Really enjoyed that episode. Very open and very honest. Really refreshing to hear somebody as well known and as well travelled in the industry as Luke deals with imposter syndrome himself. Something that I think will resonate with many people listening to this. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you liked it, please like it, share it, leave a rating. It will help. Please subscribe. You can get this podcast on so many different platforms. I'm using Anchor, I'm using Breaker, I'm also on Apple Podcasts. This will be on Pocket Casts, it's on Radio Public, Spotify, and also Google Podcasts too. If you want any more information about the podcast, you can go to the Twitter page, which is just Azeem Digi Asks. You can go to my website, iamazeemdigital.com, or you can find me directly on Twitter at Azeem Digital. Thank you very much. I hope that you come back and enjoy the next episode just as much, maybe even more, as this one. Thank you.